Hey, I'm Brian Cohn, and in this video, I'm going to be talking about my new anvil. I'm so freaking excited! Let's get into it. Before we talk about this big beauty, let's talk about what I was working on before. So before I was working on this 50-pound Harbor Freight anvil. There's so many things wrong about it. I actually did a video on how I dressed this thing up to make it somewhat usable for a new blacksmith or bladesmith. So go check out that video if you're in the position where you can only spend about $50 on an anvil. So this thing is cast iron. It's super light. I mean, there's hardly anything to it. So I'm so excited to finally be moving up to this bad boy. So this is a Hay-Budden anvil. That's an American-made anvil. They were made in Boston, New York. This particular one was made in 1909, which makes it really old. It honestly, for being so old and for being used, a lot of these surfaces are really, really good. There are some little dents and dings all around, and the biggest problem is this crack right here. Let's get into that a little bit later. But the big thing is this one is significantly bigger than what I was working on before. It's 131 pounds, but once you add this all steel base down below, the whole contraption becomes 225 pounds, which is so much heavier than that, 50-pounder that I was working on before. Another huge upgrade on this thing is the horn. I mean, this horn is it comes to a much finer point and makes it so much more usable because it's so much more round than that, very blunt Harbor Freight anvil. I'm so excited to be on this thing, and let me go ahead and tell you the story on how I found it because it is amazing. So basically what was going on is it was just a couple days before Christmas, and my girlfriend Emily and I were off looking in a bunch of antique shops for Christmas presents for my grandparents. So my grandpa, my grandma, and my other grandma on my dad's side. So basically we're looking around, and we've already gone through a couple stores, a couple antique stores, but we're going through one, and way far back in the back of the antique store sat this Harbor Freight anvil. So it was around the corner. Harbor Freight, Hay-Budden anvil. So it was sitting around the corner, and basically I'm looking through, and we're looking for a couple things, and I turn the corner and I see this beauty sitting in the back corner, and I mean, I basically stopped and I stared at it like a deer in headlights. I was so excited, and luckily Emily was further back behind me and she hadn't quite seen it yet. And when I stopped dead, she must have thought like something was up, because something was definitely up. So I turned to her and I tell her like, hey, I know we're not out here looking for, me. However, I just saw an anvil. Let me stop and just look at it for just a minute, because, I mean, what can looking at an anvil really hurt, Well, I'm looking at it, and, I can see that, it's definitely used. A lot of these surfaces do have dents and dings, but all of the surfaces, as you sit here and feel them, they're very flat and they're very usable. So, I'm looking at it and I notice it's a farrier's anvil, which makes it kind of unique. And then the big thing is I noticed this crack right here. So this crack, it goes all the way through this pritchel hole, but luckily there's two pritchel holes. So the reason why I think that this anvil is still very worth it is that, I don't necessarily need to use pritchel holes very often while I'm bladesmithing or knife making. So if I ever do come up across the situation in which I need to use a pritchel hole, well, there's a second one. I'll just go ahead and use that one, and I just won't use this corner very often. And honestly, I can use all of this anvil. I don't need to use this little corner right here. So I'm looking at it and I'm kind of sizing it up, and I think that it's worth it. And there's a price tag sitting on here, and it happened to be flipped upside down. So after I'm, oohing and ahhing over this thing, I finally get to the point where I flip over the price tag and it says $650. You know what? At that point, I think this is reasonable, because normally if you are a knife maker, or if you're looking for anvils at all, if you go into an antique store, basically what people who've bought anvils tell you is if you see an anvil in an antique store, you better run in the opposite direction, because those prices are going to be sky high. Well, when I flipped over that price tag and it only said $650, I knew that this was going to be reasonable, because, I just knew that it's a really old anvil. It's in reasonably good shape. And you know what? For $650, that's within about $4 or so. It's just a touch over $4 per pound for just the anvil itself. So the first thing I do is I call up my buddy Brian House. Now, if you've checked out Housemade, or it might be switching over, yeah, I think it's Housemade, his YouTube channel, you know Brian House is an absolute powerhouse in all that is, metalworking, tool making. He's just a powerhouse of a, entrepreneur on its own. And he's actually a good buddy of mine through the Work For It podcast. Check out that podcast. Really fun conversations between Brian House, Ben Butler, and myself. Check out the Work For It podcast wherever podcasts are streamed. But yeah, basically I called him up and I told him all about it. And he said that the price should be somewhere between, anywhere between $6 and $10 a pound. So at that point I knew, this thing was at about $4 a pound. So I knew that was a fantastic deal. And then the next person I called was Nick Tobin up there in Canada. He's Pickle Cutters on Instagram. Check out him, because he is a fantastic knife maker all in himself. Pickle Cutters, Nick Tobin, I called up him next, and I told him the same thing, all about this thing, and he said, it should be somewhere between that $6 and $10 per pound. So at that point he said, this is an absolute killer deal, and I would be an idiot if I walked past it and didn't pick it up. So I pulled the trigger on this thing. Luckily, the person who had this anvil on consignment, he happened to be there in the antique store, so I was able to talk to him. Fantastic, had a good long conversation about it. Basically I was jabbing back and forth with him for a long time over the history of this anvil. It happened to be his grandfather's anvil, who was a farrier. So basically he was a farrier, so he would go to different farms and whatnot and shoot horseshoes on horses. And this was his at-home anvil. So he had basically a beater anvil that he would take around, and he said that anvil was just absolutely, really, really used, and, a lot of chips and all that fun stuff. Well, it was something that his grandfather used for years and years and years. And basically this was his anvil at home that he only shoot a couple horses on. And this was basically his don't touch my anvil. So, that's why this thing is in such good shape for how old it is. And basically I talked to him, and I was lucky enough that he said that I could have it for $600. So I got the anvil for $600, I got the base for $600, and I made a really good friend. So, luckily I'm able to talk back and forth with that, former owner of this anvil. And so yeah, that was a really good situation, and I was so lucky to find this thing. And I've only forged a couple knives on this thing, and holy cow has it made a difference. Just the fact that this is hardened steel versus the Harbor Freight anvil, which was cast iron steel. So that Harbor Freight, when you slam your hammer down on it, like, your hammer almost stops as soon as it touches it, because that energy absorbs into the steel. Where this one, this Hay-Budden anvil, with that hardened steel top, it rebounds like crazy. So I forged out a couple knives. Normally when I was forging the tip on a knife, it would take me between 6 and 10 heats just to isolate the tip. And take it with a giant grain of salt, because I'm still a very new knife forger, blacksmith, bladesmith. So, what would normally take most people a couple heats normally takes me, 6 heats or so. Well, I forged 3 knives out on this, and I isolated the tip in 3 heats, which I thought was, really good in comparison to what I was working on before. So I'm already seeing, leaps and bounds of improvement just because I have a solid anvil to hit on, and I am so excited about it. There's a few things I'm already planning on doing. I just made a hammer and tong rack that are sitting here on the front side. There will be a video, if it's not already up, I'm sure it'll be up here pretty soon, where I make the anvil and tong rack. You can see the little process. It's just a quick little easy project that I'm sure just about anyone could do. But yeah, I am so freaking excited about this new anvil. You guys will see it a lot in my videos because I am going to be using this thing on just about every single knife I make from here on out. So it's out with that Harbor Freight 50-pound anvil, and it's in with this Hay-Budden. I mean, I couldn't be more excited. I'm excited to make more content for you guys so I can show off this and my other knife making skills. Thank you guys all for your support. If you want to check out more of what I've made and more of what I can do, check out my Instagram feed, my Facebook feed, and my TikTok on Bkohn Knives. That's B-K-O-H-N, knives as you'd spell knives. Check it out, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Also check out my website at bkohnknives.com. I really support every single one of you for your support. Please leave me a like in the comment section down below. Please blow that up with what you think I should be doing with this anvil because I'm so freaking excited about it. Yeah, so thank you guys all for your support. I hope you guys have a fantastic day.